大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。國際學生制度嘅完整性近年受到威脅。有學術機構為咗增加收入、提高收生人數，更多嘅外國學生喺冇適當嘅支持之下前嚟加拿大。國際學生嘅急速增長，亦都為到本國嘅住屋、醫療同埋其他服務帶嚟壓力。聯邦移民部長喺1月底就宣布喺未來嘅2年大幅減少外國留學生嘅簽證數量，當中亦都包括限制簽證喺大約36萬個，較去年係減少咗35%㗎。另外，由今年嘅9月開始，有部分嘅留學生畢業於公私營合作方式嘅營運學院，亦都將不獲資格去申請畢業工作簽證㗎。呢一系列嘅政策將會為本國嘅留學生以及一部分嘅學院帶嚟啲乜嘢影響啦？
國際學生一向都為本國嘅經濟帶嚟增長。本國統計局嘅數據就話，國際學生每年平均為本國經濟帶嚟223億，利潤比汽車同埋航空業更加高。不過喺今年嘅1月，加國聯邦政府就宣布要收緊本國嘅國際學生數量。
Today, I am announcing 3 principal measures. 1, a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permits. It is the latest in a series of measures to improve program integrity, set international students up for the success in order to maintain a sustainable level of temporary residence in Canada as well. To ensure that there is no further growth in the number of international students in Canada for 2024,
新嘅政策除咗對國際留學生有影響之外，本國嘅一啲學院作為政策嘅持份者，又有啲咩見解呢？
The issue with all of this is that this policy, this federal policy, was done with no consultation with the provinces, and there was no consultation with the post-secondary institutions who are going to be impacted by this.
It is debatable whether the measures that the government has put in place will work. We don't know that yet. It's going to take a couple of years until they see the decline in the number of students that are here and are graduating, and then fewer admissions. So when you have fewer admissions and you have a decline in the intake, at some point the numbers will stabilize. They will become more normal.
喺舊年，本國人口突破4000萬，主要原因係近幾年聯邦執政自由黨政府放寬移民政策。國際學生呢一類型嘅臨時居民，目前大約有100萬名，臨時居民增加超過31萬人，絕大部分係學生。人口增長亦都推高咗生活成本。加拿大住宅租金喺2年之內增長咗2%。聯邦政府為咗減低人口增長同埋令國民喺各個方面都可負擔，喺今年1月底決定採取一系列收緊移民政策措施，包括對國際學生設上限。
It's unacceptable that some private institutions have taken advantage of international students by operating under-resourced campuses, lacking supports for students, and charging high tuition fees, all the while significantly increasing their intake of international students. Today, I am announcing 3 principal measures. 1, a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permits. It is the latest in a series of measures to improve program integrity and set international students up for the success in order to maintain a sustainable level of temporary residence in Canada as well. To ensure that there is no further growth in the number of international students in Canada for 2024, we are setting a national application intake cap for a period of 2 years. For 2024, the cap is expected to result in approximately 364,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. In the spirit of fairness, we are also allocating the cap space by province based on population, such as that some provinces will see much more significant reductions. We'll continue to work closely with those provinces and territories to put these measures into place, as they will be responsible for determining how the cap is distributed between its designated learning institutions that they have jurisdiction over.
聯邦政府喺2年前放寬移民政策，目標喺2026年增加大約50萬人口，亦都放寬過持有學生簽證嘅國際學生工作時數，填補勞動力不足。不過喺舊年7月，聯邦政府內閣進行改組之後，新任移民部長就開始收緊各項政策。有大專院校嘅代表認為，今次嘅修訂預計對某部分學院造成一定嘅影響。
I think it's important to differentiate the impact that it's going to have on public institutions and private institutions. It's not the same right across the board. And from a private institution perspective, particularly the private-public partnerships that existed or exist, they're the ones that are going to be impacted the most. Those relationships really relied on the postgraduate work permits as a opportunity to bring in students from abroad with the intention that they would get postgraduate working permits, and then they get their education. Now, with that now being removed, a core element of their relationship is now gone. So they will be impacted. I'm not sure because we don't have a private-public partnership at Keanu, but there will be implications there. Then private institutions that focus heavily on international students on their own also will be impacted by this, right? Without having the PGWP. But then there are private schools that don't really rely on international. They're still developing programming for domestic students. They may or may not, depending on what their international to domestic mix was, they may or not be impacted.
移民部長宣布嘅一系列措施，減少國際學生，亦都會按各個省份人口分佈嚟決定減幾多嘅學生。有個別嘅省份已經對呢一個分配措施感到不滿。亞省高等教育廳數據顯示，省人口大約佔全國總人口嘅11.5%，但係只係獲得6.8個百分點嘅份額。但喺亞省鄰近嘅卑斯省就獲得83000個學生簽證配額，係亞省嘅2倍。不過卑斯省嘅人口都只係比亞省多15%左右。J. Notte 批評聯邦政府欠缺諮詢業界同埋各省政府。
This was an area of concern where originally it was supposed to be 360,000 visas that were going to be approved and allocated across the country. And the original announcement in January was the allocation would be distributed by population. So if we went through that, Alberta should have actually been allocated 11% of that 360,000, but we were allocated, as you mentioned, just under 7%. So we don't have an answer as to why that was the case. In fact, just last week, that 362,000 was reduced to 292,000 across the country. And the issue with all of this is that this policy, this federal policy was done with no consultation with the provinces, and there was no consultation with the post-secondary institutions who are going to be impacted by this. I will say that our province has, and Alberta has been very transparent with us, has worked with us, meaning the colleges and the post-secondary institutions here. And we're working on what our number is. So where our number should have been at, I believe, 41,000 applications, it's down to 24,500. That's now going to be distributed through the 26 institutions. So I'm disappointed of the lack of consultation. I'm also disappointed in how the allocation was provided to Alberta, where we should have been able to grow more than what we've been allocated. And I believe Saskatchewan has the same issue.
政策除咗影響專上院校之外，亦都為各個方面帶嚟唔確定嘅因素。有喺香港嘅升學中心負責人就話，加國一向係多個國家同埋地區嘅學生升學首選地點之一，但新嘅政策令海外學生對選擇前嚟本國就學有所卻步。
自從上個禮拜啦，加拿大政府咧出咗一個新嘅政策出嚟之後咧，好多家長咧都會有一個憂慮喺度嘅。最大個重點係因為咧，其實學生簽證咧，加拿大政府都宣布咗咧，嚟緊咧係會減至一半嘅。咁換句話嚟講咧，呢個係意味住即係話，如果我哋申請嘅學生簽證都唔會被獲批准。咁家長學生佢哋知道，如果有50% 嘅簽證額啦，不被批准嘅情況咧，即係話其實佢哋對去加拿大升學嘅信心咧就大大減少咗好多。咁其次就係關於嗰個計劃不確定性啦，因為上個禮拜咧政府都有提出到咧，所有學生簽證之前咧必須要攞到一份叫 attestation certificate 嘅。咁其實呢一份文件咧好坦白講好不確定性，因為到現時為止咧，我哋同唔同嘅學校啦，即係院校去溝通咧，佢哋都唔知道咧究竟幾時係會出到呢份文件。換言之咧，其實譬如我哋嚟緊5月份入學嘅學生啦，或者9月份入學嘅學生咧，所有都唔知道究竟申請簽證係需要提供嗰份文件係幾時可以攞到，同埋喺邊度可以攞到，佢哋都唔確定咯。咁所以對於我哋嚟講咧，呢個都係好大嘅憂慮嘅。變咗其實我哋俾唔到一個確實嘅資料俾家長咧，家長可能未必會考慮去加拿大嗰邊升學。
聯邦移民部嘅數字就顯示啊，目前本國咧大約有100萬名嘅留學生，係10年前嘅3倍。咁當中嘅40%咧係嚟自印度，中國就有12%排第2。移民部長米勒就指，減少簽證數量咁將會係同各省合作。而卑詩省咧亦都會緊隨其後作出相應嘅措施。我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。本國去年第3季度嘅人口增長啊，係60多年嚟最快㗎。非永久居民呢就增加超過咗31萬人，絕大部分都係學生。移民部就指減少國際學生簽證數量啊，係將會同各省份合作。喺卑詩省，省府亦都喺今年嘅1月以及3月份呢，分別係實施聯邦政府對國際學生嘅改革方案。
又喺香港嘅升學中心負責人認為，加國聯邦政府唔應該將限制學生呢一個政策一刀切，反而佢就建議當局可以考慮吸引一啲年輕人去到本國其他二線城市，俾佢哋多一個抉擇嘅權利。
其實好坦白講，我當時咧聽到呢個政策咧，我哋有一個新嘅諗法出嚟嘅，因為其實我好清楚知道加拿大咧某啲省份咧其實係缺乏年青人啊，或者缺乏人去開發啦。咁其實我個人認為就係話，如果咁多年青人都即係想去加拿大讀書啦、就業啦，同埋有機會可能定居啦，咁一開頭開咗呢個政策出嚟咧，其實應該考慮到就係之後點樣去即係緩和呢一個問題。咁我建議其實話呢班學生佢如果真係過到去加拿大即係已經反濫啦，已經供不應求啦。咁其實佢可以就係定一啲新嘅政策，就係話可以去一啲比較少人定居嘅省份啊，俾佢定居啊。咁變咗就唔需要話一刀切。所有嚟緊啊想過去加拿大嘅學生咧，佢哋嘅簽證額就會減少啦。咁樣令到其實新嘅學生咧有啲唔公平嘅，因為有部分嘅學生9月份開學已經交晒學費。咁如果9月份開學佢交晒學費，而家先嚟出呢個政策嘅話，對於佢哋嚟講，其實佢哋好即係措手不及噶嘛。因為你簽證唔係話你一時三刻即刻一個禮拜內即刻會批到，你起碼提早3個月啦，至到4個月時間去做足準備。咁變相咗而家我哋咧，其實無論係家長啦，或者我哋中介啦，我哋都係完全有一個不確定性嘅計劃，變咗好難去落判定咯。究竟係幾時去準備，幾時去安排？
一直關注移民議題嘅聯邦新民主黨國會議員關慧貞就話，對聯邦政府嘅新政策非常失望。佢話聯邦政策嘅施政失當，但係就要學生去承受。
咁樣其實我覺得聯邦政府咧，佢哋咁樣進行法咧，就真係對我嚟講咧係非常之失望嘅。咁樣點解佢會有呢一個發展呢？就其實我相信大部分咧就係因為加拿大現在咧就係有呢一個房屋嘅大難啦， 咁樣但係呢一個房屋嘅問題咧，就唔應該賴去海外嘅學生嘅身上嘅。點解我哋加拿大有咁大嘅呢個房屋嘅問題咧？就係因為成30年啊，我哋聯邦政府退出咗起呢個廉價屋俾到加拿大嘅人，咁樣咧就依靠晒全部咧就係擺咗喺呢個 private sector 嗰度啦，就等佢哋起嗰啲房屋出嚟。但係起嗰啲房屋出嚟咧，就根本咧就係太貴嘅。一般嘅加拿大人都唔可以負擔到，咁樣所以到而家30年後就有呢個咁大嘅困難。咁樣佢第一時間咧就唔係話嚟點樣解決呢個房屋嘅問題，佢咧就劃咗去第二度，就劃咗咧而家第一時間咧就係劃咗係呢個海外學生，而因為佢哋太多海外嘅學生嚟到加拿大啦，所以咧我哋有呢一個房屋困難。咁樣對我嚟講咧，呢一個嘅做法咧，真係令我非常之失望，我亦都係唔支持嘅咯。
聯邦政府喺1月推出新政策，減少國際學生人數，而分配嘅人數額亦都係按省份人口分配。至於實際分配就交由省政府自己決定。之後卑詩省亦都配合實施聯邦政府嘅新政策，包括將會暫停批准新開辦嘅專上院校招收國際學生，為期2年。省政府亦都將會要求公立專上教育機構向學生證明成個學習期嘅學費金額。
So the goal behind the 2-year moratorium on new international schools was to allow the province to actually assess what's happening here in British Columbia. We had a very large spike in both the number of schools that were opening, as well as the number of students who were coming to British Columbia. And so it was important that we take a look at what's actually happening here. And it was a significant spike. It was a significant, increase in both schools and students. So we put the 2-year moratorium in so that here in the province, we can assess to ensure that international students are getting the highest quality education possible. They're in safe, high quality education schools. And that was the goal for it. And it matches the federal government's 2-year ban as well. So it's lock and step there as well.
目前為止，喺卑詩省就讀嘅國際學生大約超過17萬，佔全國國際學生人數嘅10%。卑詩省一向都成為國際學生升讀嘅熱門之選，但省政府配合聯邦政府政策，禁止新開辦嘅專上院校招生國際學生。國際學生嘅學費一向都比較高昂，咁會唔會令現有嘅課程或者專上院校趁機坐地起價呢？
I think in the end, there is supposed to be some regulation regardless about how much your tuition increases. Our organization has seen dramatic increases in tuition. We had an issue at Emily Carr University 2 years ago where the institution decided to increase tuition by 30%. That was an extra $5,000 for international students coming in the fall. That's not something we want to see across the board. That's why we are advocating for the cap on international student tuition fee increases, because institutions could do this in light of what is happening. This could be a response to what is happening. And that's why we're asking for the cap, and also why we're asking for more funding. Because when institutions are properly funded, they don't have to go to students for the money that they need. And then students don't have to feel like they need to make a choice on what they have to do just to live or survive in school or just live in BC or anywhere else in general.
有移民律師就對兩級政府作出嘅政策成效持質疑嘅態度。佢又話聯邦政府嘅國際留學生移民政策一直以嚟都存在問題。
It is debatable whether the measures that the government has put in place will work. We don't know that yet. It's going to take a couple of years until they see the decline in the number of students that are here and are graduating, and then fewer admissions. So when you have fewer admissions and you have a decline in the intake, at some point, the numbers will stabilize and they will become more normal. Pre-2015, we didn't have any of these problems. It's just because the government opened the spigots and was granting an unlimited number of study permits to international students. That's when the problem arose. And the word got around very quickly, particularly in India, but not just India, China, Mexico, and other countries, that it was really, really easy to obtain a study permit, come to Canada, and as long as you pay your fees, you would graduate and then obtain a postgraduate work permit and eventually residency. And that's not what the economy needs. The economy needs international students who graduate in good programs, who obtain a good education, and who are employable in the labor market, so they can contribute their skills and adapt quickly into the labor force and into the economy of Canada.
卑斯專上教育及未來技術廳長不麗莎 Lisa Bear 話，卑斯省配合聯邦政府嘅措施，包括由今年3月4號開始，所有新提交嘅學生簽證都需要省級證明信。省級證明信嘅分佈比例，公立大專院校佔53%，私立院校就佔47%。當局話分配嘅比例能夠支援公立大專院校維持學生課程，亦都能夠平衡未來幾年嘅增長作為基礎。不過，江惠貞就認為省級證明將會增加更多法文育節。
呢個一定會係麻煩好多㗎啦，呢個程序咁樣第一啦，就省政府咧冇辦法，因為聯邦政府因為移民始終都係聯邦政府嘅範圍啦嘛，佢哋咁樣做咗呢個決定咧，限制咧佢哋就省份咧就一定要係進行啦。咁樣佢哋諗就點樣進行咧？咁樣第一咧就有個 attestation， 咁樣就係表示到如果啲校院接受咗呢啲學生咧，佢哋就一定要係有個位俾佢哋啊，有呢個教育俾到佢哋，咁樣所以佢進行咧呢個咧就我諗佢哋盡量嚟諗方法嚟點樣保障翻啲學生啦。咁樣咧就亦都係加咗呢一層嘅 red tape 㗎啦。咁樣就另外咧，亦都可以處理咗有一方面咧，就係有啲學生咧，因為佢嗰個移民嗰個 consultant 幫佢哋咧，其實佢申請嗰陣時咧，佢哋整嗰啲話俾咗啲學位嗰啲 certificate 咧，其實係假嘅。咁樣而家咧，省政府就擺咗個聯邦政府就擺咗個責任喺個省政府嗰度，你哋咧啲校院咧俾呢啲位出嚟咧，佢哋就一定要係表示到佢認真係批咗佢嚟接受咗佢係有個學位俾佢，同埋佢話佢嗰個學生係合格先至係可以進行。咁樣所以我諗佢就諗個方式嚟點樣處理呢一個問題咯。咁樣但係另外一方面睇法咧，就俾到呢啲學生咧，佢哋就係即係有好多程序，而家加到新嘅程序俾佢哋要處理咯。
不過，卑斯專上教育廳長不麗莎強調，引入省級證明信唔會造成任何影響。
No, it's the same system, and that's through the federal government. So it's the same student visa application as was before. It just now requires this provincial letter attached to it as well. So the application process has not changed, in how they adjudicate that. And so again, to any post-secondary, institutions that are listening, or to any students that you're talking to, it's about the best quality application being put forward.
而省政府嘅另一個措施就係希望令學費更加有透明度，期望機制能夠打擊任何坐地起價嘅情況。
As part of the changes that we did in January when we introduced the 2-year moratorium, we also implemented transparency measures around tuition. So international students know exactly what their tuition is going to be for the duration of their time here in British Columbia. So it's very clear and transparent. No longer will students come to BC and then be surprised the next year and then the next year with these large tuition hikes. When they are starting their programs, they will have this knowledge of a clear, transparent fee, what their fees are when they come here to BC, because we want to ensure that students are protected. That is the goal. And we'll be able to roll, that out later in this spring, so that students who are coming to BC this year will know their tuition.
緊隨卑斯省之後，安省亦都喺3月底公佈配合聯邦政府收緊國際學生人數政策。安省省府宣布將96%嘅簽證分配俾省府資助嘅公立大專院校，其餘分配俾語言學校、私立學院同埋其他機構，而職業學院將唔會獲得分配。安省專上教育廳長鄧諾普 Jill Dunlop 表示，省府正喺度優先支持能夠填補關鍵領域所需崗位嘅課程，例如係技術行業、幼兒教育同埋醫療行業等等。 安省省府喺上個月亦都為專上學院提供13億撥款應對聯邦計劃。當局亦都預計大專學界因為國際學生嘅收入損失2年總數大約30億。
好啦，今集嘅節目時間呢又差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。如果觀眾想上網重溫翻今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得翻㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。